For a great cup of joe, there's one thing you should know. Your morning brew can also be playful. Buff Boy Brewing guys make the temperature rise, and you surely feel naughty when you swallow our coffee. If you want some real heat, give your mouth a fine treat. You will want some more, rest assured. Buff Boy Brewing, you can't get enough of.
It's time for The Scribble, your weekly fix of celebrity chats, bizarre stories in the news, and basic random chatter with best-selling author and syndicated radio host Jeremy Bradley. Make sure your seat is in the upright and locked position and your barf bag is securely in place. Here's Jeremy Bradley.
Thank you very much, Larson. Jeremy Bradley here. This is The Scribble. Thanks for tuning in. So Inauguration Day is here, and most people know I am Canadian. So for me, I'm one of those people watching from the sidelines all the American political stuff that's going on. But a song that has become very, very American, because that's also part of its name, is God Bless the USA by Lee Greenwood. Now, he is celebrating 40 years in the music business this year. There's a big all-star tribute concert in October. Well, Lee is joining us on the show today to talk about that. First of all, his career accomplishments. I mean, again, a milestone of 40 years is pretty significant for any industry, let alone music, especially if you hear the music that's put out these days. And then we're going to talk about the concert that has, again, the biggest names in music that'll be performing. And I think he's actually breaking some news in the interview. So we're going to talk about that a little bit later in the show. But also, I'm going to share my thoughts about this upcoming administration. Now, again, full disclosure, right? I don't belong to a political party. I'm a Canadian. I'm watching from the sidelines. So I'm not here to, beat my opinion into your brain that I'm right and you're wrong, because I'm an outsider. But I think it's always interesting to hear an outside perspective when it comes to things like this, especially when the subject is so polarizing as it is in the United States. So that's coming up, and so is Lee Greenwood right after this.
Who are the Kardashians feuding with now? What did that little thug Justin Bieber do this time? Who's getting hitched? And who's headed for Splitsville? Hear the latest celebrity news and gossip every day on Entertainment Wrap-Up. The good, the bad, the ugly, but mostly the ridiculously hilarious. It's all recapped in this daily segment at entertainmentwrapup.com. Have a laugh at the expense of the rich and famous when they take themselves way too seriously. It's 3 minutes of time-wasting fun at entertainmentwrapup.com. Check out Entertainment Wrap-Up at entertainmentwrapup.com. Brought to you by Speak Free Books.
Jeremy Bradley here, back on The Scribble. Okay, so here's the deal. We live in a world right now, as I'm sure you've experienced, where people are hypersensitive, right? Everything is blown out of proportion. People are offended by the easiest things. If you misstep, well, it's going to cost you your career, potentially your family safety. You've seen stories about this. You know what I'm talking about. So I applaud, first off, the voting public for always, when Barack Obama became president, he's the first black president, and it was a big thing. And I agree with, and I applaud that. I guess what I don't understand is we're trying to move beyond labels and categories and things like that. But it's almost impossible to do that because we need to call out, hey, we've got our first female vice president, our first black vice president, our first black female vice president, right? So you have all of these sort of first time occurrences, and you want to call them out. We see that at the Oscars all the time, right? Oh, well, this is the first, black woman to win this, or this is the first transgender person. Now, again, I'm not talking about, well, they shouldn't be recognized. Absolutely, they should. But I guess where do we draw the line, right? You could be the first cancer survivor to win the award. You could be the first president with leukemia. You can be the first. Like, where is it that we stop? Now, I guess what I'm getting at is if we're in a society where we're wanting to get beyond the labels, well, a person is a person is how we should be looking at it. We know that's not the reality, of course. But I guess, if anything, I feel like sometimes in such a divided nation, calling this stuff out is actually just going to divide you more. Do you know what I mean? Like, I've heard people, and I've seen people post on Facebook, which is again why I've talked about that on the show many times, which is why I avoid social media, because I can't stand the god awful spelling. But you have people who are now suddenly saying, well, I'm a white guy, so I'm going to get passed up for the job or the whatever it is, because you know that the employer is looking for a minority. You know that they want diversity. You know that they want that. Now, I don't know that that's necessarily true, but you have people who are skeptical and cynical about things like that anyway, right? And now too, when you see a government ad, I've heard people say, because I've gone out, to the mall or seen billboards or whatever. I've been with colleagues, and you have people going and saying, well, of course they've got the diversity picture, right? Of course they've got the Asian guy, the black guy, the whatever it is, and they've got the woman, or they've got the... And, like, people are starting to sort of get that opinion and make those comments. So I don't know that it's really helping. I mean, it's helping to showcase more people, right? But it's sort of causing a divide, if that's the way to say it. You have, and again, this is where people can fire back and say, well, for so long, white men have always had the advantage of blah, blah, blah. I appreciate that, and I agree with that sentiment. But I guess what I'm saying is that it's almost now becoming a victory, where it's, haha, the black women win, or haha, the gays win. And trust me, I'm a big old fag myself, but I think that there's a time when you kind of have to stop doing the victory lap and just say, you know what, I'm a human, and the best person won. Not the best black woman, not the best gay man, not the best transgender, not the best person won. And I hope I'm articulating this correct. Like, I'm not coming across, I'm not hoping to come across as offensive, because I'm saying this in a professional and mature way. Right? If I came out ranting and going, well, I'm a white guy, then it's a different story. But I also just sort of like to give both sides of a perspective on this. Do you understand what I'm saying? And so I just, again, I applaud Kamala Harris and Biden, for the big win. And she obviously should take a victory lap as being, the first female and the first, well, I've already said. But again, I just sort of wonder, when do we stop rubbing that in the faces of people? And that's how people are perceiving it. So that's why I use that term. For me, I'm not personally offended by it. I again, like I said, as a gay guy, I'm all about, not waving the pride flag. I don't want to say it that way, but I'm certainly there to applaud and celebrate the people who make these accomplishments and these milestones in life and in history. But when do we stop that and then just sort of move on and say, okay, is it when you have a female president? Is it when you've had everybody reach that mark? Is that it? Or is there always going to be that next bar to clear? Do you know what I'm saying? So, excuse me, send me an email, live@jbonair.com, live@jbonair.com. And I also, if you do email me, which I hope you do, tell me where you're from. Tell me if you see it differently, or if it's different in your community, in your city, in your country, wherever you are. Tell me sort of the general consensus of people in the population, and if you see it differently when it's another country or when it's another place. Because again, as an outsider, as a Canadian, right, I've spent much of my time I've been in Canada now almost a year without leaving, thanks to Corona shutdowns. But, as outsiders looking at the United States, we just go, wow, that's such a divided country. And it's more outspoken and more vocal. I'm not saying Canada doesn't have racism. We know it does. But it's not as mainstream. It's not as out there. It's sort of a quiet. It's I don't know. I don't want to say it's hidden. It's just not as in your face as the American way of life. So again, live@jbonair.com. And like I said, Inauguration Day is here. Lee Greenwood celebrates 40 years in the music biz with an all-star tribute concert this fall. He's talking about that on the show right after this.
Isn't it crazy that you wait for payday, but before you know it, you're strapped for cash again? It's time to stop blowing your money and become a smart spender with the book, The Official Guide to Being an American Cheapskate, at cheapskatebook.com. Learn simple ways to cut costs at home every day and during special times of the year. Don't go broke at Christmas. Don't remortgage the house for a fancy vacation. The book is filled with tips to save you money throughout the year. Check out the best-selling book, The Official Guide to Being an American Cheapskate, at cheapskatebook.com or on Amazon and iTunes.
Ever had something to get off your chest but never had the balls to say it? That's a load of crap. Speak Free with JB.com is exactly what you've been waiting for. Your chance to tell it like it is and not care what anybody else thinks. Have your say on issues of the day. Join newspaper and radio columnist Jeremy Bradley as he tells it like it is. Hundreds of thousands of people have stopped by, including some well-known celebrities who have had a chat with JB and speak candidly about what's really going on in the world. You can join them too. Have a rant or rave. Be brave and head on over to www.speakfreewithjb.com now.
Celebrating 40 years in the music business. Does that make him a legend already? I think it might. We'll have to ask Lee Greenwood. He's joining us on the line to talk about the milestone. Hi, Lee.
Hi. Good. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Well, pretty good. I'm calling you from Nashville, and it's a beautiful sunny day here.
Well, that's great to hear. So first off, I've got to say congratulations, because we don't see many artists making it to 4 decades in the business very much anymore. So congratulations on that.
Well, thank you. I can't hardly say 40 years because it doesn't seem like it, and I certainly can't hardly say 2021 when I didn't think I would live to 2020.
Right.
But here we are, marching forward, still being productive as an artist, and doing this all-star salute to the music that I've sang on stage and through the country, touring in my bus for the last 40 years. It's amazing.
Yeah, we'll talk about the big celebration show in October, but first, my first hard-hitting question is, what's the secret to 40 years?
Strength. I think you always have to look at tomorrow. There's a goal tomorrow. Look towards the future. I'm healthy. I played sports all my life. I've never done drugs, and occasionally wine. That's the only liquor that I drink. And so I think it's just a combination of things. I'm persistent in perfection. I've always insisted on great music and musicians to play it, and including anybody who speaks for me. They have to walk the walk as well as talk the talk. So I guess that's part of it. Of course, God steps in and says, I'm going to take you. He does that. But I've tried to be healthy and respect my body.
And really, you've avoided, as you sort of listed off, the bad habits a lot of artists or people who all of a sudden get, sudden fame or money fall into. And you just said, no, I'm going to focus on the music, it sounds like.
Well, thanks for saying that. And you're right. I just never have abused myself except for work. I am a workaholic, and I enjoy what I do. And you can't wear me out, and you can't wear my voice out. I'm still singing. I just turned 78 in October, and I have no trouble singing the high notes that I've always put down on record.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's worse habits and worse addictions that you can have, hey, aside from work.
Well, you also make more money if you work harder.
Absolutely.
And there was a time in my life when I was out in Nevada and living there before my career hit. And there was a lot of bleak moments and dark spots in my work schedule, and I would always just work harder, to get the right job, make the right money, and be able to support myself since I was 16 years old.
And I mean, let's be honest too. Good music plays a big part of it too, because you have one of the biggest patriotic songs out there. You know which one I'm talking about, of course. God Bless the USA, and that just, I don't know if that puts an artist on the map even bigger, makes your star bigger on the map. I mean, what's your assessment of that song and what it did for your career?
Well, God Bless USA is definitely an umbrella over all of my music, but it's not a parachute. I am still producing new music. I have a 21-song CD I've been working on all this year because it's tough to get into the studios with the COVID.
Yeah.
But we had 5 albums before I wrote God Bless the USA in the back of my bus one night while I was touring 300 days a year. And we were producing 2 albums a year. That's incredible. We go through so much music. And on the label at MCA with me was Reba McEntire, George Strait, the Oak Ridge Boys, who will be on the show, by the way, Barbara Mandrell, and I have become friends with all those people. But we all work to the same end, and that's producing the best possible music that we could. I guess that's why we're all there at MCA for so long, and we were all very successful.
Did you think the song would become... I mean, I almost want to call it a political anthem in a way, because it has. I mean, you've met a bunch of the presidents all at the same time. I mean, what was that like? What has it been like for you personally?
Well, I worked several campaigns, and once you get to know the leader of the free world, I don't care which party that they're with, they're still a human being. And each president has a persona, whether it's Bill Clinton or President Carter, certainly the Bush president, so I work with very closely. I'm a Reaganite from way back in the years when my song first came out and he was president in 1984, and my song was Song of the Year in 1985. To shake hands with that person, I mean, I shook hands with Richard Nixon when he stepped off an airplane in Sacramento, California, and I was the drum major of my band, and I'm standing next to the airplane. I was 16 years old, and that was the first time I'd ever met anyone in politics, and shook his hand, and it was like, I wonder if this is just a glimpse of what's going to happen in the future. But I had no idea, of course. And then with our current president, who had used my song for rallies, it was pretty amazing that the whole crowd would go, sing along with my song. And I did the Boy Scout Jamboree twice in Virginia, and all the scouts would go, USA, USA. So it spanned the generations with me, and it's wonderful to know that I have something that can make America united.
And what do you say to a president? I have to ask this, because normally the everyday citizen says, "It's nice to meet you, Mr. President," or something like that. You have a president saying, "I love your music." I mean, I don't know how I'd react.
The first thing you don't want to be is stupid. I mean, you don't want to say something crazy like, "So, how's the war going?"
True.
You have to make sure that you address the president's office, not particularly the person. You get to know the person later if they allow you to do. And my very favorite was, of course, George Bush 41, who I got very close. He was a war hero. He was the head of the CIA while he was vice president then, under the Reagan administration, and then became president. I spent nights at the White House and talking with him, played piano in the West Wing, and I got just a very close friendship with that particular president. But when you get to know them as a person and talk about something not sensitive, of course, nothing has to do with the government, because although I am on the National Endowment of the Art Council, appointed by the president, and I'm a government employee, but we never talk about subjects that are sensitive to national security and all that. People always say, "Hey, what did the president tell you?" He didn't tell me anything. We had a good time, had some lunch, and just talked about the nation and how we love it.
Let's talk about the big show that you have coming up in October. Lots of star power on deck, and a few of them are friends to our shows, coincidentally. You've mentioned some of them, the Oaks, Big and Rich, Crystal Gale. What can people expect at this big all-star tribute?
Well, first of all, you have to know that this is a one-time thing. This is not going to happen again, and you'll never see this many stars together unless you go to the CMA, and you won't see them all. You'll see just a few. But we're going to have 40 stars. I mean, and we can't announce them all until January, February, March, because that's as the touring schedule begins. A lot of these are major touring artists, play stadiums and pack theaters. We can't announce ahead of them until their tour is announced. But more stars, that you have a few in front of you. I know that you mentioned a few. But Big and Rich, Riley Green, Lee Bryce, Dustin Lynch. There's going to be a handful of people. I talked to Keith Urban the other day. He's coming. Kid Rock, a good friend of mine, he's going to be on the show. And so it's just, as we begin to add the artists, the list will grow and grow and grow. But you have to just be aware. If you don't get a ticket early, you're probably not going to get close enough, to see all of these artists up close. And the Von Braun Center, I think seats 10,000. But I'm looking at the numbers already right here in front of me, since they've been coming up on the teleprompter, and we're selling really fast at the Von Braun Center.
Well, I should tell people we're actually taping this interview right now as the tickets go on sale. Literally right now, people are getting tickets to the show.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
And you have a bunch of tour dates through, next summer already too. What keeps you going on the road? So many artists would say, I've recorded, I've performed the hits, just let the checks keep coming in, I'm done. But what keeps you going?
I think that's looking at it only as a job. I mean, I continue to sing and perform because I like it. And I love making people happy and smile and going to places in the United States I never got a chance to see as a kid. So it's fun to travel, and it's fun to sing for the fans.
And finally, as we wrap this up, when you look back at 40 years, I want both ends of the spectrum. Tell me the highest high that you had career-wise, and then the lowest low you experienced as an artist.
Well, the lowest low would have been before I had my career in Nashville, starving in Los Angeles, and didn't know where the next meal was going to come from. I mean, that was really a place I had no work, and I was trying to find a job somewhere as a piano player, and I didn't really do that yet. I played piano, but if you take a job as a piano bar player, you have to know a myriad of songs, and I had to put a lot of that together, and I finally took a job and moved to Montana for a while, and then San Diego, and then back to Vegas, just making as much money as I possibly could to survive. The highs, there's been so many of those. I can't put my finger on one, from performance at the White House twice, for Cat Shot off the Kitty Hawk aircraft carrier, military bases around the place, 2 inaugurations at the Lincoln Memorial for 2 different presidents. It's really hard to put my finger on a high any higher than receiving God Bless USA as Song of the Year in 1985 at the CMA.
And I imagine it's going to be performed on October 12th, right?
Yeah, we won't leave that song out. I don't know where it'll be but in the show yet, but naturally.
If you didn't perform it, you won't make it to 41 years, I think, is what would happen.
Yeah, that'd be the end of my career, faster than Dixie Chicks.
Well, as I said, the tickets are on sale now, and sections are already selling out, as I can see on my screen here. Where can people get their tickets, Lee?
Well, Ticketmaster.com is your best place because you can do that with your internet. I'm not so good with the internet, but most people are. Or you just go right down to the Von Braun Center and buy them there in person.
Absolutely. And all the information, too, about that show and your tour and your music is on your website, too.
It is. Thank you very much for mentioning that. LeeGreenwood.com.
All right. Well, hopefully if
all social medias are at the Lee Greenwood.
We'll be sure to check it out. And if all these restrictions are lifted, hopefully I'll be there in the audience October 12th.
I sure hope so. Thanks for saying that.
Well, no problem. Well, congrats again. 40 great years in music, Lee Greenwood. Thanks so much for joining us today.
You bet.
It's never too early to start thinking about your next holiday. Have you checked out Mexico recently? From tequila tasting, swimming with horses, to ziplining through the jungle and watching whales and dolphins in their natural habitat, Puerto Vallarta has it all. Visit mexico.jbonair.com to see all the fun PV has to offer. That's at mexico.jbonair.com for hundreds of photos, interviews, and videos from around the tourist hotspot. Check out mexico.jbonair.com for all the fun. That's mexico.jbonair.com.
Jeremy Bradley here, back on the Scribble as we have that ad for Mexico, which was, we heard the president talk about that. That was his sort of big rally cry at the beginning of the presidency, wasn't it? That Mexico are going to build the wall, whatever, and then it just sort of fizzled out over time. I guess we still hear about it every once in a while, his big accomplishment as to how much has been built. But anyway, let's talk about Inauguration Day, because a lot of people didn't tune in to President Trump's and also didn't turn out for it. Now with this whole Corona thing, right, it's going to be a little bit different. But I remember I did watch it live because it ended up being an entertainment event. And as an entertainment reporter, that's just kind of one of those things that I had to cover. And I remember I watched it in our office where we had popcorn made and then we ordered pizza. And we just wanted to see how this is going to play out. Because remember, it was the biggest crowd, the most watched ever, as Sean Spicer beat into our heads the next day, right? Or was it the weekend after? I think it was the next day. And, it was just so great to watch them, walking down the street, waving to all these empty stands of no people. And Just, fascinating to see. So it'll be interesting to see what happens this year. I think maybe weather will play a big part of it. Again, Corona, the distancing that you have to do now will probably have an effect on it, but I imagine they are taking all the precautions necessary with something like that. So will you be watching? Where will you be watching? Are you making it an event where you are? All right. Are you ordering food? Are you having parties? Are you wearing any political T-shirts? Do you have your signs? Are you waving? Like, what are you doing? And again, as a Canadian, I'm sort of ignorant to things like this because on election night in Canada, people, nobody, it's not a big thing. But I know on election night in the United States in November, I know that Canadians were tuned in. Like, this was a must-see. This was like the hockey playoffs. This was like Canada versus U.S. Olympic hockey gold medal game. Canadians were watching. I mean, this was something that... Well, but also, too, because the fascination, you didn't know if the country was going to burn down. You didn't know which city would have the biggest riot. I mean, that, I'm saying it in jest, but that's also kind of what people were thinking and what was happening. So where do you plan on watching? Well, first off, do you plan on watching the inauguration? And then where are you watching with your family? Is this a big thing? Are you isolating still? Send me an email, live@jbonair.com, live@jbonair.com. I kind of touched upon that whole dialogue about God Bless the USA with Lee Greenwood in the last segment. We don't do controversial interviews, so I didn't want to start, putting him on the spot. I realized that, yes, he's a Republican, and Trump just being the polarizing figure that he is, I didn't want to start a challenging kind of a thing like, the song might have propelled you with the Trump fans. Do you think that maybe the rest of the country hates it because it is associated with Trump? I mean, that's a legitimate question, but again, I'm not Wendy Williams. I don't throw the shade or, kind of give those subtle sort of jabs, but that's a question that I would definitely love to know. See, in journalism, this is the thing. For any of you aspiring broadcasters and journalists out there, the trick is to have the nice interview, do the 10 minutes of friendly banter and chatter, and then go for the neck, go for the jugular at the end, so at least you've got your interview. They actually taught us that in school. They said, don't go for the big controversial hard-hitting question right up front, because that's where you could lose. The person's going to hang up, they're going to walk out of the room, they're going to whatever it is. You build that rapport, you have the niceties, you have the conversation. Once you feel that rapport is there, then you go for it. Then you go for the neck, and you go in for the kill. But I didn't. No, I think that, to me, I associate the song God Bless the USA with Trump. Now, again, I'm an outsider, I'm a Canadian, I don't hate Trump because, I don't know, he wasn't my president. He didn't, sure, he affected my country, to an extent, but whatever. So I wonder, though, if people associate Lee Greenwood and the song God Bless the USA with Donald Trump, and maybe is that a reason why you don't like him or you don't like the song? There you go. I'm going to ask you that. Send me an email, live@jbonair.com, live@jbonair.com. I got to tell you, we taped that interview several weeks ago. It was taped a while back, and he was a really nice guy. See, the thing that you guys don't hear on the radio or on the podcast is there's times when I'm chatting with the guest for several minutes before we're actually on, and I'm putting on in quotation marks. We have those sort of icebreaker conversations, the chatter back and forth. He told me that one of his, best friends for so many years has the same last name as me, and then his PR guy has the same first name as me. We had some good laughs before we were actually talking. And then there's also times when we're done recording, we sit and chat for a little bit longer anyway, too. And so he seemed like a nice guy. And again, I don't know that we've had many people who come on and are dicks because they've got something to promote, right? So they want the good interview. They don't want to come across as being an asshole because then, well, screw you then. I'm not going to give you good publicity for your project. He was very nice. I've got nothing against, just because a president likes the song and wants to use it. I mean, that doesn't reflect on him as an artist, but sort of like he said about the Dixie Chicks, right? When they went after Bush, that kind of ruined their career to a point. So anyway, again, the email address, live@jbonair.com. We've got a Twitter shout out, and then I'll be right back.
We hear you chirping. Get scribbling. Tweet up the Scribble at The Scribble Show. Join the discussion with Jeremy Bradley. It's all going down right now on Twitter @The Scribble Show and @thescribbleshow.com.
Jeremy Bradley here, back on The Scribble. So depending on when you listen to this, you might be hearing this episode before the Biden inauguration. If you are, follow along with me on Twitter @Jeremy D. Bradley, because I'm sure I'll be live tweeting it unless something catastrophic happens. @Jeremy D. Bradley for the inauguration live tweets. And if you're listening to this after and you missed it, you might just have to scroll back, a few days or what have you. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. And also remember that my tweets are all about sarcasm and just being silly. When people come at me, very quickly, I did sort of mock Trump with a tweet. It got over 1 million impressions within like a 48-hour period. So that was actually probably one of the best things because it landed a bunch of new followers and book sales for me. So anyway, feel free to give me a shout live at jbonair.com. I will talk to you same time, same place next week. Thanks to Lee Greenwood for joining us, and I will talk to you then. Bye-bye for now, everybody.
Want more Scribble? Check out thescribbleshow.com for past shows, celebrity interviews, cheapskate tips, and more. That's at thescribbleshow.com and on Twitter at The Scribble Show. The Scribble is a speak-free media presentation.
If you want some real heat,